Hi everyone. Today we're going to go over the basic sort of overview build process of the V4 Standard Edition. Now in this sort of quick build video, we're going to show you the sort of overall construction process. We'll do a quick build using some REPT 280 cells and just going to give you an overview of some of the basic tools that you're going to be needing. Now, since this is the Standard Edition, you'll need some additional tools such as some wire crimpers, wire strippers, hydraulic crimping tool to crimp on lugs, isopropyl alcohol, maybe some scissors, basic screwdriver, and if you prefer, a power tool to sort of assist in building. Now, understand we use Allen keys extensively in this kit, so having a Allen key set or sort of a bit set is going to help greatly in the overall construction. All right, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and just sort of go over what we have inside the kit and what you're going to basically be needing in order to continue the build. The first thing we're actually going to do is we're going to remove all 4 screws on the top. These will probably use about a M2 Torx driver bit, so that's what we'll do first, and just remove these 4. I recommend using just standard hand tools. If you have a power tool, go very gently to remove it. Okay, so with the lid removed, you should see the basic V4 Standard Edition kit. The Standard Edition kit includes the SFK 150 BMS. It's very similar to the JBD or LTT Power BMS. Main exception is with this, you can use it with the SFK app. The JBD will work with the Zhaojing app, but it won't work with the SFK app. Should you value this, then you've already if you have the SFK version, you can use both, but that's primarily the main difference in this. You'll see some lugs for the main terminals are already mounted, so we'll leave them on there. The next step we're going to do is we're actually going to remove these screws and then begin with these side screws to take this top plate and the entire assembly off. So we'll do that next. With the fiberglass BMS plate removed, we can now sort of see what's inside this kit. We have what we call a riser plate, which gives us a little bit of spacing to move the components up. This also is where the underneath side is where the BMS active balancer is mounted. So next step we'll do, we'll remove these 3 screws and take the riser plate off, and then that will give us access to the main plate of the V4 standard kit. So with the riser plate removed, we now have access to sort of the main plate. So just like the top, remove these 3 screws here and these 4 screws up, and that's going to basically reveal us the main portion of the battery compartment. So with the main plate removed, we now have access to sort of the main battery compartment, and we have a couple of stuff that comes out. You'll have some wire, some heat shrink tubing, the basic hardware bag, some lugs, your handles and rope, and some cell spacers. You'll also notice that there's these shims that go on top, and they just sort of go here, and that's fine. You'll notice that there is sort of a green bar underneath each of the ledges, and that's just to add support for the M4 bolts so that they have a more stable grip. ABS is a pretty nice cosmetic, aesthetically pleasing material, but the 3D printed PLA stuff actually provides a better grip, so we do a combination to hold these M4 inserts in. So one of the things that we did want to discuss is this foam, and this is sort of a newer foam that we're going to be using, and let's actually show the difference between this one and the black foam we have been using. All right, so here's sort of the black foam that we have been using, and this is about 3/4 inches wide, which is I think about 22 millimeters, and this is a little less. This is about 20 millimeters wide. So we're switching to this foam. It should make it a little easier to install the cells. One of the concerns people generally have with our kits is like, it's a little tricky to install the last cell. And while it is superior to do this in terms of holding power, this is actually proving to be just as effective, and it makes it a little installer. It gives you about a 4 millimeter space difference, which a lot of people have said work really well. So we're actually going to put some cells in to show you that you actually do have enough space. So I'm actually going to take the foam out to kind of show you what sort of space to have, and that will explain why we use a different type of shims. So that's going to be next. All right, so I've actually inserted the cells in here, and you can see there's plenty of gap between the cells. You can actually lift the cells up or in or out fairly easily. So there's actually plenty of space, and you can see there's quite a bit of a clearance. So the reason we do that is we also include these shims. These are sort of cell spacers that will actually increase the gap between each cell, which will provide a nice secure fitting amongst your cells so that you have a nice tight space. Now, the default kit includes 3 1mm, but you can also add some 1.5mm, and you can actually mix or match. So you can have like 1mm here, 1mm here, and 1.5mm in the middle, or 1.5mm all the way around. So in our kit, we're actually going to do just 1mm on the outer sides and probably 1.5 in the middle. But I actually will show that you can actually put 1.5mm all the way around, and it still provides sufficient sort of space. All right, so I've actually inserted 3 of the 1mm, and you can see it goes in. The cells are okay, but there is a little bit of sort of play. Now, I personally would not go with just this, but if you wanted to keep the install as easy as possible, you can go here. You'll see that there's sufficient gaps on each side. This will probably keep them in place. It's probably not the optimal in terms of compression strength, but it is easy. As you can see, I can, if I didn't have the camera, I could actually lift it. In fact, we'll show you with one of our cell pullers. So you can see I've added one of our sort of cell pullers, and I can fairly easily pull this in or out. So that's just to kind of demonstrate the different type of shims you have. Like I said, this is probably going to be the most easiest, just one per there. And since we're going with the light foam, now we'll show you how it is sort of with the 1.5 in the middle. So I have the 1.5 on each side, and we're going to keep the smooth side facing the cell here, and one over here, and then we're going to put our final cell here. Now, just make sure you understand the orientation before you complete your install. You will have final negative facing here, final positive facing here. So the way the orientation of these cells will work is negative, positive, negative, positive. And you look at these terminals to give you an idea. Now, your cells may vary. They may have different markings. This is just how we're doing for this particular setup. So now we'll put in the last cell. And by the way, there are various ways you can install this. If you prefer not shoving down the cell, you can actually tape this side from here all the way around in here using Kapton tape. But since this is not a heated kit, you can actually use just regular Scotch tape and put it from here to hold it in place while you insert it. So it's entirely up to you. So we got it in place, and we have the sims here, and we're just going to put it in place. And now that is a better fit. Still not perfectly tight, but it's a little more stout, and with the top plate on there, it should be sufficient. Now, you could actually even put these at the very end if you wanted to increase stoutness, but I would probably put that in there before first, if you know, because this is not going to be the easiest thing to put in. So if you wanted to, you could actually put 3 1.5mm and put some 1mm shims on the other. But you can see, in contrast to our previous kits, we've made the installation of these cells significantly easier, and now it's almost too easy. So depending on your preference, you can decide whatever it is, but assuming you don't have very bloated cells, the 1.5mm shim should make this extremely easy to install and still provide sufficient stoutness to where it's in there. But I guess this fits 9. The rep cells are a little thinner than EVE cells, so we're going to go with 3 1.5mm and install it this way, and I think this is going to work well for our build for the V4 Standard Edition. now that we have our cell situated, and just want to make sure again, check the orientation, negative, positive, negative, positive. So it's almost like a wave. See the plus? So just make sure you do that before you go to the next steps. And after you do that, we should be able to proceed further. So we're going to put our sort of cell shims. And what this is going to do for most of your cells, your LF304s, 280K V3s, Rep 280s, almost everyone is using a 204 millimeter height cell. So this is going to basically allow you to match it. And then simply take your top plate, put it in there, and secure them down. That's going to provide pretty good support. That inclusion with the foam and the shims, it should hold in very nicely. And then go ahead and secure these down. Prefer you use hand tools to do this. If you're going to use a power tool, be very gentle. You don't want to strip these out. If you do, it's not the end of the world. Contact us. We'll tell you a way to do it. You can kind of heat it back up and secure it. But again, it's best you just tighten it by hand, and that's going to secure it in place. All right, so let's talk about what's included with the V4 Standard kit. So you get your handles, your rope, you get 2 feet of blue 6-gauge ultra flexible silicone wire, and 18 inches of red and black wire. You get a hardware bag, which includes various lugs, some washers, and the bolts needed to finish up your kit. Some sort of, I guess you could say, keeps to keep some of the balancing wires or antenna in place. You get lugs that are matched to the BMS, and you also get the active balancer with its harness. So the first thing we're actually going to do is we're going to prepare our wire. And for this, you're going to need some tools. This will include wire strippers, crimpers, and a hydraulic crimping die. Now, if you don't want to actually do the crimping, there is an option at the checkout on the product configurator where we will actually pre-crimp and cut all your wires for you. So if there's something you feel uncomfortable with, just choose that option for a small fee. All of your wires and your harnesses will come pre-crimped, which will speed up the process. So now we're just going to give you a basic overview of what you need to do and how you need to prepare your wires so that it will work with the V4 Standard Edition. All right, so let's talk about how we're going to prepare our wires. So the first wire we're going to actually do is we're going to cut the blue wire, and we're going to create basically 2 equal sized lengths. They're going to be about 9.5 inches, and they're both will be the same length. So you'll do that. Then we'll take the red wire. We'll have one wire that's about 6 3/4 inches in length, or just under 7. And then we'll have another piece that is about just over 5.5 inches. So that's going to be your red. For your black wire, we'll have one that is right at 5 1/4 inches. And then we'll have another piece that is 4 1/4 inches. Okay, so that's how you're going to cut up your wires. Okay, so you'll have extra left, extra red, extra black. So we give you extra. So if you screw up one wire, you should have enough to do it. Now, if you screw up both ends, just contact us. We'll figure out a way to get some extra wire for you. But this is really nice, ultra flexible 6-gauge silicone wire. It is copper that has been tin coated. Plenty of power, should be easily able to handle 150, 200 amps. And we use 2 of them to make the curves and stuff a little easier. Okay? So we'll show you, and this is going to require you to have a crimping set, so just crimp it as needed. I'm not really going to get in details how to crimp. That's going to be entirely your decision. We use a pump-based hydraulic press for our crimps, but using a hand tool such as that yellow one should work just fine. All right, so this is sort of how our harness will look once completed. You can see we have a long harness for our blue. We have sort of a curved harness for the red, and a black harness for, for a black. Now to go over it, the black, you have a short end, you have a high end, and you have that. Notice the orientation of the lugs. So 2 small lugs, big lug, and the red, you've got a small lug here, a large lug here, and it's sort of at a curve. So just notice the orientation. Small, 6mm lug here, 8mm lug here, and the 8mm lug is upside down. Right side up, upside down. So notice how this is done. And finally, this is how the blue lug is. 6mm lug here, straight, and upside down facing 5mm lugs that attach to the BMS. So that's how you prepare sort of your wires. Now, some tips on how to prepare wires, because this is, if you haven't done it before, it may seem a little tricky. So I'm going to go over that next. Glance, you may seem, wow, this is a lot of wire. It's not going to go here. I should twist this. Do not do that. You want to get this bundled up as close as you can and ram it straight into the little lugs. They're designed to fix 6-gauge wire, but it's a tight fit. So don't twist this, just put it in. And I'll show you how it looks like when done correctly. As you can see, this has gone in correctly. You may have a few little wires that stick out, but that's fine. But this is actually hitting the butt end of it, and we did not twist it. Notice how the wires are straight and they're not twisted. So you don't need to twist, just take your time. It goes in just fine. Now we'll show you how the one that does 2, how the 2 into 1 sort of looks like. All right, so when doing like your 2 to 1s, these 2 gauges are going to be very close to these 2 6-gauge wires are going to be very close to a 6-gauge wire. So we're going to put these 2 in there. Make sure you have stripped a sufficient thing. You're just going to clump these together to kind of make them look like one and put them straight into that. And we'll show you how it looks like. All right, as you can see, they've gone in just fine. And they're putted up all the way up to the end. So you don't need to twist them. And once that's done, you just basically crimp it with your crimper, and it will create a nice solid crimp. Tug it to make sure they don't come loose, and you should be fine. Now, I know some people are going to be like, well, these are 2 wires into 1, and we understand. But because of our BMS has 2 separate ports for entry, this is the optimal way to handle it. We've made over close to 2,000 kits this way and have not had a single failure. Crimped correctly, it will work perfectly. And again, if you are concerned, we can do this for you. Just choose the option, pre-crimp my wires and cut to length, and we will give you a set that's pre-cut just like this, ready for install. All right, now let's talk about the BMS wires and how they need to be set up. All right, so there's 2 harnesses inside the V4 Standard kit. You've got a harness for your active balancer, and you've got a harness for your BMS. Now we include 10 lugs, so you can actually put a separate set of lugs on each this and this, and that works fine. That will make 2 separate harnesses. You can individually remove them. If you are concerned and you prefer not using an active balancer, you don't have to. You can skip that step. We have used them in many of our kits, almost 2,000. It works fantastic, and it should be left on the entire time, in our opinion. But there's differentiating opinions, so you can proceed with the way that you want. But I can assure you, if this was not optimal, we would not be doing it. It adds cost to it, but we feel the end result is a superior product. All right, now there's another. I will show you how the harnesses look with the lugs attached, but we'll also show you a different option where you can actually do a combination harness where both of them together. And in this kit, that's what we're going to be doing. We find that to be a cleaner install, works just as well, and you can decide which one works best for you. All right, so if you make 2 separate harnesses, this is sort of how it's going to look like. You will have your black lug to your black, your red lug to your red. The one in the middle is the yellow. The one closest to the positive is the blue. The one closest to the black is the green. And basically that's mimicked exactly like here on the active balancer. So this is the way of doing it, two separate harnesses, and we've concluded the hardware for you to do this way, should you like. But now I want to show you a different method, which I think is getting more and more popular. It eases the install. It looks just as nice. This is the combination harness, where we have two separate lugs or two separate connector pieces, but they're going to a single lug. You'll notice both reds are now going to one single lug. Both blacks are going to one single black. So how do we do this? Essentially, you take the stripped ends of both the active balancer and the regular BMS, twist them as one wire, and then crimp them together to make a solid connection. And what that allows you to do is now you only have 5 mounting points where you have to install this, and makes this install a little tidier and neater. So the combination harness works just fine as well. So whichever method you prefer, you can use. The hardware is included to do both. For our install, we're going to be using this combination harness. I think people, once they see it, they'll appreciate the clean and efficiency of this just as much as we do. Thank you. So we're now going to begin installing the cells. So a couple of things. As you can see, we've got some bus bars. Whoever you get your cells from should normally include this. If you add the option to include bus bars at the V4 kit, we will include these for you. But if you've purchased cells from elsewhere, you'll ask your whoever you purchase your prismatic cells from to supply you this. Now, before we start actually attaching the bus bars, it's absolutely critical you clean them with isopropyl alcohol and a paper towel. If you leave these terminals dirty, you're going to get bad readings and you're not going to have a good time. So make sure you thoroughly clean this, including the bus bars as well as the terminals, nice and proper, so that you can get a nice solid connection. Now, there are a few things. We have included some washers, but we're actually going to recommend you have direct contact of your cell terminal on top of this. Now, we are using lock washers. If you have serrated nuts, you'd want to use some of the included washers on top of the thing, and we'll show you how that looks like once we put our bus bars on. Alright, so we're going to start basically wiring up our BMS, and we've cleaned the terminals out. On the first negative, we'll put the blue wire, or the blue harness we created, so we put it out there, and on the final positive, we'll put the red, and it's going right there. And we put bus bars in this orientation, 1, 2, 3. That's how you want them, okay? And just before, make sure negative, positive, negative, positive. That's the orientation you want to have. All right, then we'll put on our harness and we'll start bolting things down. All right, so a couple of notice things. So you'll notice we have a large contact area. So we're actually putting this directly on top of the bus bar. No washer, straight there. Now, if your cell kit came with these serrated nuts, you don't want this to bite directly into there. In that situation, take one of the washers that's included with the kit, put it on top, and then you can use this. Okay, now if you are using flat lock nuts, you don't need to do it. You can if you want to, but it's not required. So it's not really going to make a difference. The main thing is we want the lug to be direct contact with the bus bar. Now, the side, you can just put a washer there and put the lock nut this way, and that's really only there to keep the bus bar in place. Okay, so we're just going to keep going down and finish this up. All right, so we've went ahead and installed the wire harness, and we used some Velcro straps to kind of give a little bit of cable management. And we have both the BMS balance wire and the active balancer coming out the same side. That's how the 150 BMS is set up. But as you can see, this is nice. And because it's a combination wire, so we only had one attachment here and one attachment here. So that's why we like the combination harness. It does sort of the same thing. Now, you can use some of the wire keeps to secure the wires in place. But I actually think we did okay. I think we won't need them, but personal preference. If you prefer to use some of those, feel free to, and do it. Just make sure everything is solid. Now, extremely important. we are going to use a voltmeter to test this to make sure the wire harness is set up correctly, both of them. And once it's correct and the voltage is correct, we can move on to the next step. Again, very important, make sure you measure the voltages. You're basically going to measure across these pins. It should be 13 something volts from the final negative to the final positive, and then incrementally go from 3.3 to 6.6 to 9.9, and you want to make sure they're all set up correctly. Test both the active balancer and the BMS wire. Make sure they're both reading correctly, and if they are, you can then move on to the next step, which is going to be installing the active balancer and the riser plate. Before you mount these plate onto here, make sure to connect this. See this, because you won't be able to connect it if you already bolt it down. So make sure you do that and then bolt these down. All right, that's how it should look, all bolt down. And the next is going to be the BMS, and it's a few wires, and we're almost going to be home free after that. All right, so let's keep on going. All right, so now we're going to be installing the BMS top plate. You're going to have 3 of the short screws here, and in the middle, and the 2 long screws are going to go on the outer side. So once you have it in place, make sure there's no wires getting caught or pinched. Go ahead and start bolting these down. All right, bolt it down. And this sandwich together is going to make sure your cells don't come loose or go anywhere. So as far as the major construction is done, that's pretty much done and well with. Now, we went ahead and attached this, and we're going to place this BMS somewhere. That is where some of these wire keeps are going to come in handy. So what we're going to do is install these blue terminal wires here. Then we're going to install our black wire here. But we're not going to plug this in until the very end. So this plug is going to stay out until the whole thing is done. And at the very end, we're going to go ahead and plug it in. So now we're going to set the wire up and show you how that looks like, and then basically wrap this build up. All right, so pretty much everything is set. This is still not connected. You routed the blue wire around here, bolted it down here. Black wire is going towards here, bolted down here. Put 1 temperature probe sort of to kind of get the ambient temperature of the case, 1 to sort of measure the cell. Use few of the wire keeps to kind of keep it in place, and we sort of tape down with Kapton tape or Bluetooth module somewhere over there. So overall, pretty much wrapping up, we're going to install the lid with the M8 bolts, and once that's done, we'll plug that in. And for the most part, the build's done. We'll put the handles on, and that's going to be pretty much a wrap. So let's get to it. All right, so mounted the bolts on, and now finally we connected the BMS balance port into the BMS to activate the BMS. But for the most part, yeah, the inside is done. You want to make sure, if you wanted to seal it with silicone, don't do it quite yet. Make sure the battery's functioning correctly. If that's done, then unbolt it. You can put silicone sealant around here, removable, and then seal it up. But we'll bolt the lid on and do some tests. And we do a capacity test, but we've probably done, I don't know, a few hundred of these now. So just watch any of our other videos. You'll sort of see a benchmarks, or watch one of your favorite YouTube reviewers. I'm sure they'll have a video showing this. But we'll do that. We'll put the handles on, and that's going to be it for this sort of build for the V4 Standard Edition. To finish up your install, you'll take your rope, thread it through both sides of the handle, and then go underneath and latch it from the bottom. You'll use a flathead screw dowel to snap it in place. When you have it in place, you'll have this. This is our V4 style handles. As you can see, it's got nice little grooves for your fingers. Grips real nice. So we'll just install that and show you how it looks on both sides. And obviously you'll put the remaining M8 bolts on top. Alright, so we got both handles installed. Test them, pick them up. Got the final 2 bolts installed. And if you want to install the sticker, go ahead and install the sticker now. But for the most part, we are done. We can test it with the app, launch that up, see how it's going. We've already done that in our other video, but for the most part, it's already been programmed by the factory, so it should be ready to go. You'll just set up some few parameters, do some tests, And yep, that is going to be it. V4 Standard Edition. We built this one with the REPT280 cells, which are available through our website. You can also choose to add them to your cart when you're buying the V4 kit, or you can choose High Performance 304 cells. We will also be having EVE 280K version 3. Yes, version 3. It's supposed to address some of the concerns people have had with the previous version 1 and version 2. So those should be available soon as well. All right, well, thank you very much for watching. And if you have any questions, just email us, cs@sunfunkits.com, or use the help button, help menu, and click on support on our website and just send that form in, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions or provide assistance the best way we can. All right, thank you again. Thanks for choosing Sun Fun Kits.